All right, Jeff, let's have some fun with the ambassador of fun himself, who joins the show once again. I can't wait to talk to him. Dave Raymond, thank you for the time.
Wait, hold on.
Oh,
Jason,
I already screwed up the interview, Jeff?
It's the end of the year, last show. You might as well screw it up. He is now not the ambassador of fun.
I got it wrong.
Just the ambassador of fun. He is now the hero of happiness.
I'm sorry
Dave, how you doing?
for misidentifying you.
Jason, it's okay. Nobody else knows it. I'm trying to tell everybody.
Jeff apparently is up on these things. I am not up on the latest information, but I love that title too. You should, if this whole mascot thing doesn't work out and happiness and fun, you should go into a branding thing just for people's slogans, because you've got great job titles every time.
Yeah, but he takes them all for himself.
Yeah, you and Jeff are my agent in that regard. I'll give you 10%. Dave, you don't get 20%. I'll give you 10%.
Dave, we figured there's nobody better to have on at the end of the year to talk good things, but also we'll talk later about the airing of grievances, because it is Festivus. But before we get to that, why don't you tell us about the hero of happiness?
Well, it's been, I honestly think that, you get this moment in your life. Hopefully everybody would get an opportunity to say, this is what I'm here for. The business of speaking has, I've been speaking for over 40 years, because when I was with the Phillies, part of the outreach was to go tell community groups why the Fanatic is important. And in 77, I started a company called the Fun Department, which was a company that's still chugging along now. And was employee engagement, morale, retention. It was about coming in and taking a break and enjoying themselves. And I learned that there was real value to this message. And it's led me now to where for the last 6 years, most of my business, I still have my marketing business, Raymond Entertainment, where we're designing and building character brands. But in part because of what the philosophy was to get these clients to understand why they were investing in fun, led me to the storytelling of difficult times that I had in my life that I just didn't share before. And the fact that being the Fanatic actually saved me from being in a state of hopelessness, which is a bad state to be in. And so to be able to get in front of an audience and tell these stories of the Fanatic, which I love, but have the value of the message being, you can do this yourselves. And what's great, I guess maybe not so great when you realize why it's happening, but because of the last 2 years, leadership has had a chance to take a breath now and realize, now that they opted in for physical safety, they got to look at their mental, the mental component of their lives and their employees' lives. So when I was asked to speak before, it was, well, we'd like you to talk to our sales department, talk a little bit about how this branding can help our sales efforts. And we want you to talk to our leadership about, how they might be able to inspire their groups. Now they're saying, forget about it, Dave, no industry jargon. We want you to come and talk about self-care. And that's a beautiful thing, because, it goes in cycles. So we got through the pandemic. Many people have been able to make their businesses thrive from some of those lessons. And then they realize we haven't been taking care of our people. We're losing some of our A players. And so I'm going to Nashville in January for a big a chemical company that handles all of the pool business. There's their version of fun. And I'm talking to their people about self-care, not about the business of chlorine, sanitizing pools and making the place safe for everybody. It's just about, taking care of themselves. So I'm just blessed. I'm excited. It's growing, and I get to perform again. But I get to have a voice for a change.
It seems like performance on a different level, though, in terms of sometimes the seriousness of that when you talk about mental health challenges. What's it like for you to be able to tell a story and have people relate to that story on a level like that, as opposed to working with your friend in the green costume who's just there for smiles and entertainment?
Well, I think that's a great way to describe it, Jason, that you have a tendency that when you're working in the environment as being the best friend of the Fanatic, the work is very difficult, but the payoff is amazing, because people yell constant. I say, look, what would it be like to walk into the environment where you're getting paid to work, and everybody greets you with, "I love you." give me a hug, take a picture with me. I mean, so that was very healthy. And it's one of the things that I discovered that helped me during difficult times. But when you have people come up to you at the end of a talk and they say one of two things, they'll say, I'm so glad to hear you talk about these things because I've been doing them naturally. And I did them when I was sick, or they'll describe some struggle. And now I recognize it's important for me to do that. And I wasn't giving that much value. Or like a young girl from Florida, 18 years old, talking to me like she was telling me a joke, said, I've been thinking a lot about suicide, but after hearing you talk, I'm not going to think about that anymore. And I had to bite my bottom lip so I didn't look shocked. And I said, do me a favor, will you? She happened to be from Fort Lauderdale. And I said, when you go back home to Florida, find somebody that you trust, a family member, a friend, and tell them the same thing you told me, because that's an important step. And you just, that, and it wasn't anything specific that I did other than sharing my true story and my struggles when I was at the same place where I was considering suicide in the midst of having that wonderful job because the brutality of life was visiting me. And that's what happened. So I can do all the things I love to do. I can connect to people. I can entertain them, and then give them a message that really has value. And that's what we call serious fun, because the seriousness is that people need this, and so it's exciting and it's wonderful. And then of course I get to watch my Phillies, make it to the World Series. I mean, I just all of that stuff has been happening recently, and I'm blessed and excited to keep doing this.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because you saw the glow on your face when we were talking, when you just mentioned the Phillies. Well, as now just a fan, as a guy that doesn't have to go on the field, what's it like to be able to just kind of sit in the stands? And I've heard you, I've been with you, I've seen you at games.
I hear you're not a wallflower at games, Mr. Raymond.
How much fun was this year for you and the people that you saw around you?
Well, it's difficult. It's like showing people pictures of your vacation, and how great it was and how beautiful it was, but it's just hard for them to capture it with that photo. But just to give you some sense, my kids are grown. My oldest, my 33-year-old son, Kyle, is in Colorado. So we're texting, I'm showing him videos. The games on TV that we weren't there, we're all connected. And my daughters are adults. Probably the young man that is my future first son-in-law has been going out with Maddie for a long time. We all came to the game. I had bought some cigars from Brian Prop's company, and I lit it up with Derek, Maddie's boyfriend, and we were out at a tailgate smoking these cigars. And I have this great picture of all of us together at the back end of this pickup truck that was one of Derek's friends that we went to this tailgate. And then we went in and we were in the Hall of Fame area, and we sat there and we saw the game. And my 17-year-old son, who's my youngest and just has become this enormous sports fan, but first an Eagles fan, and now just like you, Jeff, like your son, he'd come running to me with a tweet to go, look who the Phillies got. I'm like, I'm downstairs working in my office. He's running in with a tweet, and he's so into it. So and he said his dream was, he said, Dad, I just wanted the Phillies to make the playoffs, and I wanted to make a playoff game in person. And I've lived my dream. And we saw when Rhys Hoskins hit the 2 run homers, it was basically the next day was Roy Hobbs, right? It was quintessential Roy Hobbs. But we saw little pieces of Roy Hobbs throughout that whole game, because we went down, was it 4-0 or 6-0 after 4-0 after the first inning. But I told my son, I told Dylan, I go, this isn't over. This team is going to come back. And every time you were sitting there in the stands going, I wonder, or I wish this could happen. And then it happened. And it was, I'm actually glad that because of the rain out, we couldn't make the World Series game that on a Thursday, which would have been a bad one. And I just was really glad that I didn't have to see that. I mean, I sat and watched it on the TV, but with my family. But the only way I can say it is that just to see my kids experience it the way I always hoped that they might. And it's the same thing that we talked about, your relationship with your son, Jeff, and how he wants to. There's part of him that wants to be in this business, and it's all because he's lived it and breathed it. And because, a good parenting, one of the few things I've done as a parent that was great was make sure my kids hated the Cowboys, hated the Yankees and the Mets, and the New York Giants. Sorry, Jeff. And
you had to go there.
And I brought them up the right way, and I'm sitting here wearing my Eagles hat. I've got a coffee cup, the Eagles coffee cup, and I can't wait for Saturday. Maybe a little Minshew magic, who knows? But it's just so spectacular. That's spectacular is the way I can describe it, to be able to be with your family. And we're blessed that everybody's healthy and things are going well, which, life isn't always like that. And it did, like crime went down. I mean, we hear all about the crime in the inner cities around the country and gun violence and all that thing. Well, the crimes in Philadelphia dipped to the lowest it's been since the recent surge in crime, because I always said the criminals are like, oh, let's watch the Phillies game. We're not going.
You talk about happiness, though. People are happier when the team in the city is doing well. They put on their hat, they put on their jersey, they say hello to somebody that they don't know and say to go for the team. Like my sons got to see that for the first time, really, with a team on the run. Now, my 2.5-year-old really only cared where the Fanatic was, frankly. So he just kept looking for where he was on the TV. But they got to see that happiness that a community has when your team is experiencing that and their fans are on the ride too.
Yeah. And you see the way we're talking about it. So this goes into the message of powerful fun or serious fun, that if you look at from the lens of connecting without any discussion about race or sex or religion or politics, if you're wearing the Phillies pinstripes, you are a member of the family. Now, the Fanatic's vision of that is that he looks at everybody, and truly, if you're wearing the Phillies pinstripes, come on over here and give me a hug. I'll give you a noogie. I'm sticking my tongue in your face. I mean, because you're a member of our family. That's really important in today's world when you see that. And I love capturing pictures of the stands with the Fanatic, on the field, looking up in the stands, and then get a high res picture and then zoom in on all the colors, all the shapes, men, women, old, young. It doesn't matter. That as long as you're a member of that group by wearing the colors. And this is what is so important for sports. People who dismiss sports and why are we doing this? Why are we paying all these guys this much money? It's because it really is important. It is one of the few places where you walk into and just your problems just roll off your shoulders for a few hours. And like you said, you connect to strangers with high fives and hugs when your team's playing well. And when your team's not playing well, it just highlights how great it is when they do win, which is what life is like.
Unless you're a Flyers fan, in which case it's just constant misery.
Yeah.
I just saw them score 5 goals and beat the Columbus Blue Jackets, who probably is one of the few teams that are struggling worse than the Flyers.
I was going to say, congratulations. You saw the one win in the last, dozen?
I did want to ask you, though. You mentioned...
You need to go more.
You mentioned...
I know. You're right.
You mentioned, like, the Fanatic giving noogies and things like that. Do mascots have to act different in the postseason than they do in the regular season with it's not quite a May or June game with nothing on the line. Yeah. The tension in the stadium, the stakes that are there. Does a mascot do anything different, or they just go do the same stuff?
Well, logistically, it's harder because you don't have room. Everybody's there. They're in the aisleways, standing room only. It's virtually from a technical logistical standpoint of a performer in a character costume, it's really hard during the playoffs to get around. So you got to find places where you can go where everybody can see you. You make quick little visits here and there. And then you get out of the way. There's never a time when this is what's so beautiful about the Fanatic. You got Smoltz talking about the Fanatic and not wanting to know, like he said, well, I never really met the guy inside, which was me when he was playing. Said, I never really met him. I don't want to meet him because he's like a kid. He doesn't want to lose the perception that the Fanatic is real. So the great mascots like the Fanatic become part of the broadcast. I mean, that's a multi-billion-dollar production in terms of revenue and eyeballs. And they gave, total out of all the broadcasts from there through the World Series, probably 30 straight minutes of the Fanatic, talking about him, showing him. It's really, really important work. during the season, what's great about it is that because of just the lack of tension, the lack of, the payoff for winning at any particular game, is that you entertain yourself. You're out there trying to entertain yourself. And all the traveling I did on the road working in minor league games, there were games when actually I got to know everybody in the stands because there were like 50 people there. So I had 9 innings of entertaining 50 people, and I just started focused on, hey, I'm going to make sure I get these people to laugh and smile. I don't care about the fact that there's not that many more people here. So you're having fun. You are enjoying yourself. I think 90% of what I did in creating the Fanatics personality were the things that I enjoyed. And the reason why it resonates in his personality was I'm a huge Phillies fan. So I understood our insecurity. I had the heartbeat of a Phillies fan in me. So while I was trying to entertain myself, I'm doing things that everybody else that was a fan like I was would be doing the same thing, pinwheeling the Mets hat onto the field, eventually bringing it back to him. But after I rubbed it in the Fanatics underarms and stuck the tongue at it, maybe, stepped on the dirt with it and then handed it back to the Mets fan, everybody lived vicariously through the Fanatic doing that because they'd get kicked out of the stadium if they did that. So it's entertaining yourself. And I really believe that the best performers in this industry are huge fans of the sport. They're not just there because they were a theater performer and this was their outlet. They're big dyed-in-the-wool fans, and they just happen to have a great talent for doing it.
But if you're in let's say the game like the no-hitter, Game 4 of the World Series, what do you do in that situation? If you're the mascot,
if he's a Phillies fan, he cries.
If you're a fan, you're stressed out, you're not happy. What do you do? Do you fade into the background, or do you go out there and try to cheer people up or put a hex on the other team, or what do you do?
Well, it's a great question. And so I got to pull you out of the technical, but we were talking about the technical part of it. Mm-hmm. The real true mental part of it is you lose yourself. So if you develop a personality like the Fanatics personality, you truly are that personality. So none of that affects, the Fanatic is so confident and knowing that everything's going to work out. He has the mind and the heart of a child in that regard. Like nothing's ever going to happen bad. And when it does, he's devastated for a minute and then he's right back into the thing. So I think, again, technically you want to be careful with that game because you don't want everybody to say that you jinxed anything. So you're careful where you are, when you are. And as a fan, you are excited about it. But when you're working, it's truly, you're in that moment and you're seeking people out that aren't necessarily connected to the no-hitter. So they're younger people, maybe casual fans, and you're going to interact with them and you're leaving the rest of the people alone. It's a balancing act between, well, who really cares about this? You can see it on people's faces. And you go to areas where maybe you can be seen by the crowd, but you're not around a lot of people. So on the top of the dugout is a place, and then in other areas where they can see you. But I think it's the personality, Jeff, takes you over, and you just, I miss so many Phillies games when people said, "Oh, you're at the game. It's so great." I'm not really seeing the game. I really catch up when I would go in for a break and watch what was happening on the television and get caught up in my dressing room. Excuse me. So you don't really get to see it. A lot of times you actually don't know what's going on until you recalibrate during a break and say, "Oh my gosh, this is 6 innings into a no-hitter."
You talk about.
Well, hold on, because I'm gonna give you guys a moment. Okay. First, it's going to be with one of my grievances, which is the Eagles chant at other sporting events, which I don't really understand to this day.
The Fanatic does not lead that chant.
Right. Well, obviously, because he doesn't speak. But one of the beauties of the Phillies World Series run was there were no Eagles chants during those games. So, I'm happy that happened, but I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to talk about your Eagles.
Oh, look at that. Some Eagles talk.
Well,
just be kind when we talk about the
Jason,
Giants.
why not, Jason, weigh in on I want to hear what you think about the Eagles' chance at other sporting environments?
Look, I've never really been quite into it, frankly. I mean, I go to watch the game I'm at, but I don't mind fans doing that. I more have a grievance with the wave at the game than I do a chant at the game. So if we're talking about grievances at the game, people can yell whatever they want. It's when they stand up indiscriminately for the wave that I draw the line, and I'm like, no, that's enough already. So that's kind of where I come down. I know that's not the direction Jeff was looking for with that one, but your thoughts on it?
Well, so I would say, let's just assume the cheer is a display of your love of the Eagles. If they're going to wipe all that out, they're not going to have Brandon Graham come in and ring the bell at a Sixers game, right? Why would they do that? It's this. Well, it's this. I think it's this. And the reason why you didn't hear Eagles cheers at the World Series is because we were at their version of the Super Bowl, and no one's going to be making some Phillies cheer during that time. We were at the pinnacle, so it didn't matter because the Eagles hadn't really gotten there yet. It looked like they were doing well.
Well, and the other athletes were here. I mean, you had the Eagles players there watching the games. You had the Sixers players. You had the Union. And that's the thing that's been fun is instead of the competition that you've seen of the one-upsmanship in prior years, you're sort of having a jumping on the bandwagon where the teams kind of support each other, which kind of makes it more fun, I think, when the teams do that.
So right now it's 1-0 you for the best grievance because the wave is absolutely correct. And Jeff's one is lame about the Eagles cheers. He's a grumpy old man when he says
we will keep tracking and get to more grievances shortly.
We're getting to get off my lawn.
Jeff is the get off my lawn part of the show. But before we get to more grievances, I did want to ask you about the emotion of a mascot. I did not realize that this would get into a larger story, but the Stanford Tree mascot, the gentleman who plays him, is currently suspended for carrying a Stanford Hates Fun banner on the field. Talk to me about the history of the Stanford mascot and the challenge that a mascot has in terms of what they can say and do versus how it reflects on the people that they're out there saying and doing it for.
Yeah, well, first of all, whoever's suspending that performer for doing a wonderful thing should be put in a dunk tank the next fundraiser for Stanford charities because it was just flat out wrong. However, the Stanford Tree program, I've known about them for years. And when the Mascot Hall of Fame opened up in Whiting, Indiana, we had this big media conference, press conference, where a lot of remote reporters from other areas around the country came in to ask questions. And there was a reporter from the Stanford magazine. It's a student-run magazine, and he wanted to know what I thought about the Stanford Tree and how it might possibly be considered to be inducted in the Mascot Hall of Fame. And I said, well, explained to him that's out of my control because there is a process. But if I had anything to say about it, I would absolutely consider Stanford Tree because it was a pure form of brilliant stupidity. And he went, he kind of recoiled a little bit, on the call. And he said, I'm not too sure that would land well here. And I go, no, you got to understand, in my world, that's the highest level of competency in the world of powerful fun, is that it's serious fun. It's brilliant stupidity. And your students are so stressed with the work they have to do, because that's not a school that you go to and not be a serious student. But in order to be able to maintain that, you've got to have a chance to have some fun and hopefully safe fun. And the tree represents the students' desire to enjoy themselves. And it's a perfect banner for the Stanford Tree to pull behind was, "You're fun killers here. Stop it." That's perfect. And they allow the Stanford Tree to be run by students. So why would they, put the hammer down? It's different if the student is inebriated. That has happened before with that program too. But, I just think that's a perfect reflection of exactly what I'm preaching, is we have to understand how vitally important it is to enjoy yourself and to make others laugh during times of difficulty and stress. And he was complaining about them cracking down on parties and drinking. And I understand why that's such a big thing in the college campuses today. And I understand that, but that's a beautiful banner. And I guarantee you, except for that one group of administrators, it was funny to everybody else.
All right. So here's your chance. It is Festivus. Your airing of grievances. Take the floor.
I got a lot of problems with you people. Now you're going to hear about it.
There you go. Floor yours.
It's my greatest. That was one. Yeah, there's many great moments in Seinfeld. That was one of my best. George's dad is phenomenal. I've got two mascots and one general. What would you like to hear first?
Go for the mascots first.
All right. So I'll go with the one that I was going to say second. I'm gonna go first because I like it better. So just recently, you saw the Jaguars beat the Cowboys. Sorry, the cow cockroaches. Anyway, the Cowboys. They beat them, right? They came back, and in one of the it was either the tying touchdown or the go ahead. The two players that were in it might have been Lawrence. I can't remember who met the receiver or the running back. I don't know the details. To score the touchdown, and their mascot Sir Purr was right there, and they ran up and hugged the mascot. I'm like, all this stuff about celebrations, you make a tackle, the team's down by 2 touchdowns and you're jumping all over the place. Let's have a little love for the mascot. Stop leaving him alone in the end zone.
Was this when he was wearing a Speedo, by the way?
I don't know.
Oh, there's another one where he's just wearing a Speedo. But go ahead.
So you believe that mascots should get not that I appreciate the Dallas celebrations, but like when they get in the Salvation Army pot, that the Dallas Cowboy mascot should get in there with Zeke, basically, is what you're saying.
They should pull the mascot in, make him the center of some dance. I mean, imagine that is the one thing that these players have not done. And I know that the performer there's been there for a long while. That's a very valued mascot in Jacksonville, like the Fanatic is in Philadelphia. So it was perfect. It was like Casey Wolf is the same type of character. But I want to see more of that. That's the pure benefit to show the character to fans, that the players embrace the character too, like Bryce Harper has done for the Fanatic. It just really pulls it all together. So my airing of grievance is that there has not been more mascot related celebrations, specifically in the NFL, because it's such a perfect place to do it. My other one is that it just shows these people that are writing and producing commercials that they grasp onto one that they love and then they just hammer it to death. So the two mascot performers, one guy comes in, they're nondescript costumes. You can tell it's a football because they're wearing shoulder pads. He comes in, takes his head off, opens up a cooler, he's got a beer, and he sits down to drink a beer, and then the opposing mascot walks into the same locker room, shrugs his shoulders, guy waves in some on, they take their heads off, and they have a beer together. Well, then they hammer it was funny, right? And then they hammer the commercial through that was last year's football season wasn't rolled out. It might have even been Super Bowl. And then they run it through basketball games, and it's not football anymore. Like, why don't you guys get off your butt and do one for a baseball game? It's not that hard.
Full mascot employment Dave Raymond is arguing for here. Do not limit it.
Come on. It was a good, and again, in my industry, I have to say this is a bad idea. You shouldn't be drinking beer while you're in costume. But it's funny. It's a great.
Must be hard to drink a beer while you're in costume too.
Yes. Yeah. And you're not supposed to take your heads off. They do everything that we tell performers not to do. But it's, in the locker room, taking a break, behind the scenes. And I loved it. But then they could have done so much more with that. And instead they just keep running the same commercial. And I'm like, come on, guys, you're a company that has a huge marketing budget. Just continue to have fun. Tell that story further.
It would be fun if they had like a series of mascots sort of for all the different sports going through it. Like that would be kind of entertaining, I think.
What? Yeah. And
they are supposed to be creative. I mean,
that's the point. That's my grievance is that these people, they get locked into one good idea and then they just don't. That's like, that was it. They get one good idea a decade, and that's what we got to watch for the rest of the time because someone doesn't come up with another idea.
That's why the Super Bowl for years had horses and dogs in every commercial.
Yeah. And frogs, horses, dogs, and frogs.
And now your non-mascot grievance?
Now in this one, I know all of you, every American sports fan is going to love this grievance because we're all saying it. So because of the World Cup, and I'm a really big European football fan. I enjoy it. One of my clients was Manchester City, and I got a chance to watch Manchester City play Real Madrid, and I was standing right on the sidelines where the corner kicks are made, and I'm just so appreciative of them as athletes. But you know what? How hard is it to, when somebody gets hurt, you go click and turn the clock off, and then when the guy gets up and you're ready, click, turn the clock on. So at the end of the game, how many extra minutes?
You don't enjoy 9 minutes of stoppage time that only the ref knows exactly how many of those 9 minutes have already been played. And
hold on.
It's the dumbest thing in sports ever.
Yes,
there's nothing else that can compare to how the stupidity of that, not brilliant stupidity, just flat out stupidity.
Right, but at least in European soccer, you at least know how many minutes. In the MLS, it's like this big mystery that you can't even know how much extra time there is. It's just you're randomly sitting there going, "Oh, are they going to be able to take a shot?"
By the way, Dave,
Jeff did
not have that listed as an official grievance, but we have sat at games before where he has complained about that specific thing, not seeing how much extra time was up there.
What's the secret?
There is no. You know what it is? It's the stubbornness of the rest of the world, because they know that America is the only country that has really not embraced this amazing sport, which is just by sheer numbers. I mean, you look at what happened where they had to air rescue the team because 4 million people showed up in Argentina to celebrate the World Cup. So obviously this has captured the hearts and souls of people. But when they hear Americans complain about the stupidity of it, they get stubborn, go, "Oh no, that's what we do," instead of looking and realizing that it really is stupid. The rest of the world needs to realize this is the dumbest thing ever. And all you have to do is just stop the clock. Why don't you do that? Purely because they're stubborn and say, well, this is the way we've been doing it for thousands of years. So, okay, so you've been doing it wrong for thousands of years. It's time to change.
It's tradition.
Anyway. Yeah, tradition.
Okay, Jeff brought it up. So you said it earlier. Tradition is Jeff's way of saying get off my lawn. He doesn't want something changed. Like anytime Jeff doesn't want something changed, it's tradition. But the tradition of the shift that was brought in baseball, he is very excited to see go. And that is one of his grievances, though he has added an additional grievance to complain about after the shift goes. Go ahead, Jeff.
So I'm finally, my grievances after years, every year I think I bring this up in the area of grievances, which is the shift. Now they're actually going to change the shift. But we've had on players like Greg Dobbs who have said to me, managers are just going to find different rules to get around the shift. Like they're going to start running before the play starts. So my grievance for next year, I'm already putting in there, which is the managers who need to find ways around a rule that's supposed to eliminate the thing that I'm so annoyed at.
I think, all right, I got to give Jeff the title so far. That's one of the grievances that made me laugh the most.
Yeah, no, Jeff is definitely consistent in his desire to get rid of the shift, to blow it up any way that he can not have it occur until somebody hits it through the hole that's been abandoned by the shift next year. And Jeff goes, if only we would have had somebody over there to block that, which will definitely happen. Okay, I got to ask you, Jeff gives me pushback all the time because you're somebody who's, worked with kids a lot, with mascots. The late start times for sporting events, I hate it. I like daytime opportunities for kids to see things. I'm at this point old and my kids don't sleep through the night, so I don't want the game to end at midnight when my child's going to wake up at 4 a.m. Your thoughts on the late start times, which, by the way, the Phillies went in the opposite direction this year and did 6:30 starts during the week a lot of times for people to be able to go. And that half hour makes a huge difference. You get through an inning and a half, 2 innings of baseball for a kid to see before they're ready for bed.
Yeah, Jason, I'm 100% on board with you with that. But the solution is economics. There is no solution. It's going to remain that way because of the economics. So you saw I'm not wrong in saying in the playoffs we had some daytime games because it suited the schedule because they had so many teams playing, so they could do the triple header. So all we have to do is to figure out a way to make it so that the owners in baseball makes more money when they do that. So I don't know how you do that, but I absolutely agree. Baseball for me, and this is also been my complaint with baseball, they seem to be the one major league sports that will talk all about youth development and what they're trying to do, but almost everything that they do in terms of generating revenue and building the model is a negative consequence to build young fans. I mean, if I could, my area of grievance is there's no version of the baseball bunch with the Chicken and Johnny Bench doing a Saturday cartoon entertainment piece with baseball as a backdrop. And yet you look at the NFL's relationship with Nickelodeon, with the with the slime and all that. I mean, that's so innovative to get young people. That's what you have to do today to get young people involved. And baseball constantly just seems to be oblivious to the fact that I think in the long run, you're going to start losing fans that are going to be generational for you. I mean, the father and son and that love of baseball is not going to generate enough income and viewers. So yeah, they got to figure out a way to do it. Why not do a special game time for a young audience and let Nickelodeon, let Nickelodeon pay, or Disney, whoever owns Nickelodeon, to pay baseball to have the opportunity to have a day game.
Well, wait, here's an idea. What's the best sporting event for baseball? The home run derby. Do that during the day. Put that on someplace like Nickelodeon.
Yeah, and that's
the thing that kids want to see.
Yep, and you see the launch angles and all the analytics get played in that. I thought.
Oh, you said a bad word for Jeff. He'll add something to his
launch
grievance
angles,
list with launch angle. It's
you saw the version of the home run derby this year. It was done really well. That's when I thought, okay, this is a good move. This is what I'm sorry, I got pop-ups on my screen and I suddenly couldn't see you. That I think that was really yeah, you're right. And it's the stock market that pops up all the time, and I don't know how to get rid of it.
Oh, that's a grievance too. The stock market.
I don't want to see this. But it was really done well, and I just got done shooting at Major League Baseball. They did a great job in the All-Star game this year. I have no idea what the NFL is doing with the Pro Bowl. I mean, I get it. I think they cannot have a football game anymore for the Pro Bowl. I think it should be just some sort of a, skills competition like they're talking about, or a banquet, for God's sakes, and just, show it on television and give these guys a trophy and shake their hands and just show highlights of them, because it's just not capable of sustaining itself with all of the concern about injuries now. So I think creative, you hit on it, Jeff. I think the creative stuff they could do around these all-star games, which are really becoming ineffective in terms of any type of serious competition, or in the case of the NFL, worrying about injuries, and that players don't want to go and play in the NFL's all-star game. So let's figure out a way to regenerate those into video gaming fandom, have them come and be a part of that. So I don't know what it is, but I would love to be on any of the think tanks for Major League Baseball on how to connect to kids better. Because I think if they listen to a group of people that have some experience like I do, it would be very helpful, because it just doesn't look like they're focusing and really doing something other than inner city youth and at-risk kids. They've always done that well. But in terms of really driving the game to, like my son, when he was 6 or 7, it was really hard for us to do that. Fortunately, because as a dad, I really paid attention to all my kids about showing them, and the Phillies was obviously part of our family. So, but I think they just need to work on. That's an area of grievances that Major League Baseball has got to work on youth development in terms of making them fans.
Well, look, I mean, partnering with Jeff, he can find grievances all day. But at this point, we'll let you go. We could keep talking to you for the rest of the day, but we'll let you go. Any year-end messages to sports fans everywhere through the perspective of fun and happiness?
Yeah. Do not, whatever it is you're spending, and I know not everybody can afford to go to games, but whatever you're investing, your time or your money, to go see a sport, don't have anybody ever tell you that it's not valuable. And because it's a place where your brain needs to be refreshed and rewired and removed from the hell that life can be at times. So here's the thing, when you're feeling really down, when you're struggling and you've tried other things that don't work, go to a sporting event. And in your local area, whether it's your college or in your area, or to a major league or a minor league game, because it's the best medicine that you could ever take.
Even a Flyers game?
Even a Flyers game.
Dave
get to see Gritty. Come on.
That's right.
True. Yeah,
Dave
that's right.
Raymond, ambassador of fun, hero of happiness. I will not make that mistake again. You have a wonderful rest of the year. We look forward to talking to you next year and continued success.
Yeah, I love being with you guys. I'll do it anytime. Thank you for helping me with the time on this one, too. For that.
And happy
I
Festivus.
appreciate it. Happy
Festivus.
Festivus. Air those grievances, Jeff. Come on.